The Battle and the War, an Edict AI short story. Written by J.S. Morin. Narrated by Michael Naramore. The setting felt like the community theater version of politics. Poles holding aloft U.S. and state of California flags near the head of the conference table didn't stand quite perpendicular to the floor. The chairs had been worn bare in spots by an endless succession of cheap suits. A sheen of refurbished hardware store polyurethane across the table's surface was unpleasantly tacky, as if someone had mixed the epoxy components at a slightly mismeasured ratio. Dr. Addison Akers occupied a chair near the far end from where L.A. County Supervisor Mary Ellen Brower held court. Her phone burned a hole in her pocket, longing for escape. She kept her hands below table level, fingers laced as her thumbs traced little snippets of circuit diagrams on her palms for lack of anything productive to do with them. At her side, Nikki Knowles, her business partner, was the financial yang to her technological yin. They'd been growing Edict AI together for years, from software demos and venture capital pitches to meetings like this one, and only when trying to convince people to spend money did their spheres overlap. No one would invest in Edict AI without some compelling evidence that it was going to work. No one was going to put money into Addison's hands directly after speaking with her for more than 5 minutes. It was a pairing that benefited both of them. The rest of the table was filled by the remainder of the Board of Supervisors, mayoral aides from L.A. the city, Pasadena, Glendale, and Santa Monica, a rep from the Governor's California Innovation Council, and California's junior senator in Congress, Jocelyn Wu. She was as responsible as anyone for the gathering. Addison could command the attention of academics and corporate scientists. Nikki could wrangle financiers. But it took a politician to round up this much political clout in a single room. Not that it was much. Nikki had been impressed by the guest list. Addison had never heard of any of these people before Edict AI needed them. It wasn't like her vote would have mattered, and she had better things to do with her time than follow a game where she was on the sidelines. A slideshow lit one wall. The laptop powering the projector was at least 5 years out of date. Someone had made an assumption that a white wall was good enough for use as a screen. It wasn't. The glare and fuzzy focus hurt Addison's eyes, and the milquetoast steaks hurt her soul. Parking enforcement web portal, building permit applications, housing services forms. These were tasks for a team of Caltech interns, not Edict. Addison had constructed a revolutionary Gen 6 quantum architecture that 99% of the scientific world still thought was smoke and mirrors. She'd programmed a native-born digital AI that was already conversational even in its limited test environment. And these mediocre bureaucrats wanted her to assign it HTML coding and database hygiene.
"Do you see any problems with the scope, Dr. Akers?"
Supervisor Brower asked. Addison, whose attention had been on a persistent code loop issue that needed her afternoon, snapped back to the room with everyone in it.
"What scope?"
she countered.
"I could—"
Her chair jolted slightly as Nikki kicked it. Rather than continue boasting that she could fix the county in a week of giving up her evenings without a Gen 6 quantum AI helping, she returned to the corporate coaching Nikki had drilled into her.
"Get Edict on that within the time frame of the proposed contract, no problem."
The next time they dragged Addison into the mix, someone brought up the question of potential job losses. Again, Addison returned from her own head, this time trying to decide whether to start on Season 2 of Kimiko's Castle and go week by week with the release schedule, or jump on Battlestar Cats, which was complete and available to binge.
"Look, nobody's full-time job is managing all these sites. You can tell just by looking. The people who wrote them are retired and living in Arizona. The people who maintain them clearly have other aspirations in life. Anyone who fires someone for Edict taking this off their plate is just scapegoating to cover some other cause."
Nikki rambled on for a while, justifying their expenses and fighting back against scope recession. What if Edict did a little less? Would that be cheaper? What if we started smaller? Is there an Edict light we could try? The politicians wanted everything and balked at being asked to pay for it. This was the price they paid for refusing to work with the DoD. Military contracts were funding tsunamis, and while generals would have demanded sky-high performance out of Edict, they'd have been willing to pay for it. For all Nicky's faults, Addison had picked him out of a crowd of business types because he also didn't want to be shackled to the military-industrial complex.
All well and good, but I'd like to hear that from Dr. Akers.
Addison attempted to hide her huff of frustration.
Yes, Edict can handle this all at once. You can get a unified, cross-connected, user-friendly, self-maintaining suite of citizen-facing and employee-facing government services, all pointing to a monolithic database on the back end. I forget the exact figure you all just settled on, but whatever it is, you're getting a deal. Edict will grind the county's costs into the floor. We could charge 4 times as much, and it would still be a net gain for your budgets.
Senator Wu smirked.
I thought you said you weren't paying attention to the numbers. None of the numbers I've heard thrown around would matter. You're looking for efficiency, and you'll get more of it than you can imagine possible right now.
Nicky cleared his throat.
Dr. Akers is still in venture capital mode. You don't need to worry, though. We won't overpromise or overstep. You lay out what you want done, and we'll make sure Edict AI does exactly that for you.
Addison couldn't help noting the distinction that Nicky always spoke about Edict AI, the company, and Addison focused on Edict, her AI. Addison held her bracelet near the reader beside her apartment door. The lock beeped. Addison tucked the device back up under her sleeve and headed inside. As soon as the door opened, she was struck by the scent of pepperoni and greasy cheese. She shuffled through and into her spacious abode. The whole place had once been a hotel, refurbished into apartments years ago. Addison's place had once been 8 rooms spread over 2 floors with a view of the Pacific Ocean. At the time she'd first rented it, it represented the nearest available unit to the new Edict AI offices in Santa Monica. A dispute with the landlord the year before had ended with Addison buying him out.
Even without Edict AI making it to an IPO, Addison had invested in a college friend's business. She didn't want to manage an apartment building. Nicky made sure she didn't have to. Refusing to allow a simple pizza to improve her mood, Addison headed to the kitchen before it got cold.
How'd it go?
Sierra asked. Addison's roommate technically worked for her at Edict AI, but that was a sham set up so she could visit Addison at work and use the company gym. They'd been roommates in college, just roommates, and afterward, they'd stayed together. Neither got along well with other people, though Sierra got along with men in small doses just fine. She was pretty and came from family money and was somehow brilliant too. Addison quietly hated every individual thing about Sierra except her brain, but somehow still ended up as her best friend.
As predicted, the County of Los Angeles is hopelessly unrealistic in their expectations of Edict. I assume Alan tipped you off when we headed back?
Despite being able to see the road just fine with either glasses or contacts, and many a first-person shooter attesting to her reflexes, Addison teetered on the verge of arrest any time she took the wheel of a vehicle. Her own thoughts could be distracting enough, but combined with pedestrians and traffic, it was a recipe for vehicular manslaughter. Her board of directors had demanded she hire a driver. Sierra waggled her phone.
I got your ETA to EAT and timed it to Coveney's order to race you here. You must have just missed the guy, too. Cute. USC hoodie. Almost invited him to stay, but I didn't think you'd be in the mood for company.
Addison had explained before that anyone was free to purchase college memorabilia without attending. Sierra served them each a slice, and Addison blotted hers dry with a paper towel before digging in.
It's like they either don't read my white papers or think I'm lying,
Addison groused between bites. The crack of a beer can and a metallic slide across white quartz ended with a nod of thanks and a chug.
It's infuriating. Nothing Nikki tells them hasn't been published or provided to them already. We sat in that room for over 6 hours, and I don't think anyone else fired a brain cell the whole time. What was lunch? Senator Wu didn't want the minutes to be part of the public record, so we all broke for lunch separately. Nobody told me until they shooed us out into the halls. If I'd known ahead of time, I'd have had something delivered. Don't tell me you didn't eat. Nikki knows he's not supposed to let you— I ate from the vending machine,
Addison cut in. Sierra glowered, mom style.
Twizzlers or Pop-Tarts?
Addison carefully avoided looking at her as she grabbed another slice and started the blotting process.
I was hungry. Both?
Addison nodded.
Addie, you're not some broke college kid anymore. You've got to stop treating your body like you're still 20. Next time something like that happens, tell them you could have used more notice, do whatever you want for lunch, and show back up for the afternoon session when you're good and ready. They literally can't do this without you. It's a game. I'm following the rules. It doesn't look like winning or sound like winning or feel like winning, but Nikki seems pretty convinced that we are. All I have to do is sit in the chair, dissociate for a few hours, and answer the occasional question. No different than dental work. I can't be the reason this whole deal falls through. In the hours and days that followed, Addison would replay that conversation in her mind to discover what had overridden their mutual understanding on the subject of hugs. Sierra was a hugger, Addison was not. The agreement was that Sierra should get it out of her system on other people. Nevertheless, Addison found herself straitjacketed in Sierra's arms. It's going to be okay. You solved exabyte-scale qubit decoherence. You can figure out how to stay awake through some county supervisors' meetings.
Addison nodded, confident the shoulder jammed under her chin registered the gesture.
Would you like to kill a few thousand orcs with me tonight?
Addison certainly needed something to distract her. If Sierra was willing to spend the night at home, Addison was willing to multiplayer just about anything mindless and flashy.
Yes.
The next session of the Artificial Intelligence Efficiency and Government Committee started off with Addison objecting to the committee's name. Apparently lacking in both pith and pronounceability wasn't grounds for changing it, and Addison switched immediately to Plan B. Plan B involved noise-canceling earbuds and keeping her phone in view under the table. She sat cross-legged in her chair, not even hiding that she was playing a mobile 4X game called Stones to Stars, which had come out last week to glowing reviews. It was hard ever justifying the time to play a mobile game when she had access to more computing power than Spain at her office and graphics cards that the manufacturer sent her before public release, in exchange for Addison testing the drivers for them. The game was fun. Not great. She wouldn't have played it on the couch at home, but here or at the DMV, it was a viable alternative to encroaching madness pressing in from all sides. Her little band of Neolithic cave dwellers had reached the Bronze Age by the time Nicky knocked his knee into Addison's shoe. She glanced over in the hope that the contact had been incidental. One quick look of apology from him, and she'd go back to trying to mine out a hill near her third settlement so she could advance to the Iron Age. No luck. Nicky needed a response. Swiping on her screen, Addison brought up a transcript of the meeting as her phone had recorded it thus far. Another swipe, and she slid her way down to the end. That is, if Edict is capable of independently managing conflicting goals. Addison seethed out through her nostrils. Nicky knew this one. He knew. He had to know. She couldn't have been more clear. Of course, that's what she was here for. Whether he really had a sieve between his ears or just wanted to let these elected and appointed busybodies hear it from the source, Nicky expected Addison to step in.
Edict will have an overriding guiding principle. If you want multiple competing goals, you need to pick a winner beforehand.
She kept glancing down as she scrolled back for context.
If you're worried that government efficiency will come at the cost of oversight, you just need to pick the one that's more important to you. I know you political types love the why not both answer that lets you avoid hard decisions, but computers can't do that. Not even quantum computers. In the event of a conflict between two ideas, one has to come first. If it's able to do both, it will, but that doesn't mean Edict still won't need a definitive final word, literally, on matters of hierarchical decision-making. If you try to implement an artificial ethical system with multiple co-equal guiding principles, your system will fail, spectacularly. You can see the same in—
Thank you, Dr. Akers. Nikki slid in to take over. Interruptions involving her official title meant he was serious. Otherwise, a simple, "Thanks, Addison," did the trick. She shut up, turned the sound back on, and went back to conquering pre-industrial Earth on her phone. Back at headquarters after the meeting ended before the workday, Nikki wanted to see Addison in his office. "Close the door," he told her once she was inside. The two of them worked at far ends of the building with a sea of cubicles and lesser offices in between. It wasn't that the two of them didn't usually get along. On a personal basis, Addison found Nikki inoffensive, but she hated that her life's work involved investors and stock options, and he got scared at an existential level by being fundamentally unable to grasp how or why their product even worked. The less they saw of one another, the happier both generally were. Addison shut the door, already past her Nikki quota for the month. "What the hell was that all about?" he demanded.
I was available for questions and kept myself occupied, so I didn't offer unsolicited opinions. It worked.
"It was amateurish. Plus, when I did finally get your attention, you took a cheap shot at politicians in a room that was nothing but except for you and me. And I stopped you just before you went on a secular rant against religious moral systems."
It's a good analogy.
Audience, Addison, audience. This isn't a TED Talk or a podcast. This isn't your tech tribe. We need these people. Addison huffed and settled onto Nikki's guest couch. He was welcome to stand to yell at her, but she was exhausted after a day of doing nothing, stuck in a substandard, non-ergonomic chair.
We can't go promising stuff that Edict isn't meant for. First, they want 2 core beliefs. Next, it's 3. Then it's, why can't all beliefs be core beliefs? And the next thing you know, we've got a contract that's utterly impossible to fulfill.
Contracts aren't your department. Addison scowled.
Technically, they are.
Nikki worked for her. This was her company. She owned a controlling share of the stock. To outside appearances, Nikki was the CEO, but in corporate filings, that role belonged to Addison. Nikki was CFO, but their operations breakdown split responsibilities awkwardly. Whatever his actual role, in this conversation, he was the aggressor. Nikki swiveled one of his monitors around. "You love data. Here's some to chew on. We use enough electricity to power an NFL stadium. We're chewing up our VC money, and the next time we have to dilute our stock, you're going to have to lose your majority share. I've got investors lined up in droves, but the clients are gun-shy. They want to see us land this county contract so that someone with clout backs all our claims. Please don't kill the golden goose." Addison knew her metaphors. She was the golden goose here. Edict was the egg. Nikki was just a farmer's market down the street. But no one was going to buy golden eggs until the FDA assured them they wouldn't get heavy metal poisoning from their omelets.
Fine, I'll be bored. I'll sit there at the final meeting with my mouth shut and repeat all your bland corporate—
"You're not coming."
I'm what?
"Not coming," Nikki repeated. "We're nearly there. We've got contract verbiage to cover. They believe, Addison. Despite your best efforts to convince them otherwise, they think we can do this. They're willing to front a substantial, but not budget-fixing amount of cash, and I can parlay that into buku bucks on the client side. Let me handle this. I'll bring Stacy for technical backup.
and we'll be able to fund the big launch.
Double the processing power. Finish the server construction. Edict was a critical mass proposition. Her current working version was little more than a digital assistant. Most of the computing overhead was in maintaining sentience. Nikki didn't get to hear about her overnight conversations alone in the office after even the janitorial service had cleared out, consoling an algorithm that knew what it was, teaching it to cope with its reality, befriending an entity that thought suspiciously like its creator, who knew no other way to build a mind. That's all it was at this point, a digital playmate. It was trapped in Edict AI headquarters, limited to speaking with Addison. Not even her development team realized it was already independently intelligent. If it took Nikki signing them up for whatever this turned out to be with LA County, she'd accept it as the price of seeing Edict evolve into something more than a desktop toy. Nikki strode into what he dearly hoped to be the final meeting with the LA County Board of Supervisors for a long while. He had on his closing day suit, the same one he wore to meet Addison for the first time and to propose to Alberto. Compared to those, today was set to be a cakewalk. "Morning, everyone," he greeted the assemblage. Most of them worked in this same building, so he was the last to arrive.
"No Dr. Akers this morning?"
Senator Wu teased. She'd been forewarned, and this was the icebreaker. She wasn't a financial stakeholder in Edict AI's success. Her buy-in was political clout. She wanted a success so she could push California's tech leadership on the campaign trail. Their goals meshed, and the only thing getting in either of their ways was taking a personal day to stream movies on her couch until Nikki gave the all-clear. Nikki hung his laptop bag over the back of his chair and settled into his seat.
"Dr. Akers instructed me to see to the final details. She's prepared to sign off when I'm satisfied."
Code. Addison doesn't care, and I'm keeping her from not caring so blatantly. Supervisor Brower took center stage.
"My people have been kicking around final wording for the so-called edict that Edict's AI will be running based on. We're leaning toward playing safe and having its fallback principle be legality."
Nikki made a showy, thoughtful face, pursing his lips with a measured furrow to his brow.
"Sounds constraining." "You think your AI can't follow the law?" Brower challenged.
Not at all. I think it will follow laws regardless of the moral code it's assigned. Computers love rules. They give guidance and structure. It has millions of microfactors determining every decision it makes. Laws reduce its options and make the process quicker and cleaner. I'd think you'd want to leverage a more ephemeral goal, like housing security or environmentalism.
"Housing security is 2 words,
Senator Wu pointed out. The way Dr. Akers explains it, the word is a computational token. Just because English doesn't have a single word that can encapsulate ending homelessness and rent control programs doesn't mean Edict can't conceive of them as a single concept. You can't tokenize a whole mission statement. That part's getting baked into the regular code, but the edict in Edict AI isn't constrained to a single word or character limit. Nikki sure as hell hoped that was right. "What about net zero, then?" someone suggested. Another supervisor spoke up. "Or taxpayer-friendly." "Could keep getting us all re-elected fit into a token?" drew a few laughs. They kicked around ideas, switched gears to pore over the mission statement, chipping away at the marble statue of a final version until any subtlety or nuance was gone. After lunch, after a great deal of rehashing and debate, the committee convinced Nikki to sign off on efficiency as a great catch-all principle that would satisfy any taxpayer advocacy group, hold up under scrutiny at budget hearings, and cast them all as heroes of the great Los Angeles bureaucracy. In its final form, it read, "Edict AI. I will seek to understand the workings of my assigned systems. I will then make and implement recommendations within the boundaries of my authority. Once I have determined that I have succeeded at a task, I may expand the scope of my work to match my capabilities and understanding. With each expansion of scope, I will seek renewed authorization and only proceed when that authorization has been received. My overriding goal in all activities assigned to me will be efficiency. Nikki fired off a final version to Addison before the meeting broke. Her reply came so fast he wondered how she could even have read it all.
Go to hell, Nikki. But I'll sign it.
He forced a smile for the sake of the other committee members. She's on board! Addison had taken her contacts out hours ago. Now she squinted bleary eyes to see through glasses that needed replacing with a new prescription. Not that it wasn't anything leaning closer to her monitors couldn't fix. Increasing the font size on her array of monitors at her office desk would have worked too, but she'd have had to put the size back to normal the next time she was seeing clearly. Oh, but Addison was seeing clearly that night. Nikki had sold Edict out. Efficiency? What a crock! She'd e-signed the documents with bile rising at the back of her throat. Anything to get moving. There was hardware down in the server room they physically couldn't power up because of building codes and the electrical supply to Edict AI headquarters. In addition to the money levy Nikki was tearing down with the signing, the Board of Supervisors would be helping streamline approvals to get them the electricity they needed. Using traditional computing hardware, matching Edict's capabilities would have taken the power of a sun, as in all the solar gain Earth received transferred miraculously without loss to the electrical grid. With Addison's Gen 6 quantum processors, that same computational load took around 0.5 megawatt. Still more than they could currently draw. Soon enough, that would change. Nikki had pre-greased some runways, or however he put that. Contractors were all lined up. Staff would be working from home for weeks, but they'd return to a building primed for Edict's launch. And the launch date was set. Late February. Addison only had a few short months to get ready. There was a knock at the door, which startled her because she'd imagined she was alone in the building except for one security guard who knew better than to bother her. Through the glass wall beside the curiously opaque door, the design of which continued to puzzle her, Nikki waved. She beckoned him in.
What?
Sorry about the railroad job. Won't happen again.
Better not, Addison grumbled. Brought you something, Nikki teased.
Addison noted one hand hidden behind his back and immediately went into Sherlock Holmes mode. It could be held in one hand. She hadn't smelled food upon him entering. Nikki revealed a bottle before Addison could formulate a guess. You know I don't like encouraging you, but I figured this was cause for celebration.
Wouldn't a celebration have been more appropriate with the whole team here?
This time Addison finished her calculation before Nikki spoiled the solution.
Or did your business card not have the funds to buy champagne for the whole team?
Nikki pressed a hand over his heart. Oof, truth hurts. But it's all water under the bridge. Tomorrow morning, the sales team pushes into high gear. We've got the B2B ad campaign set up. Warm leads we can pick right up. We'll be cash positive before the first check from the county hits our bank account.
Please aim that thing away from my workstation, Addison told him, pointing to the champagne bottle.
They retrieved some Dixie cups from the kitchenette and popped the bottle over the sink. Their toast was a dull plastic clack. To Edict, Addison sneered.
To efficiency.
He threw back a chug. Addison sipped. When it wasn't as bad as she'd feared, she drank the rest. I saw Alan waiting outside. Have you given him a departure time? Nikki asked after their second cup apiece.
I didn't call him at all. Blame Sierra.
Well, don't keep him out there all night.
I won't,
Addison promised. Once Nikki was gone, Addison accessed the building's security cameras and made sure he drove away. He probably should have found a ride of his own, but Nicky was a salesman at heart, and he had a salesman's tolerance for business-related boozing. True to the letter of her word, if not the spirit, Addison fired off a text to Alan.
All clear. Head home. Take tomorrow off. I've got work to do.
It wasn't Alan's fault Sierra had kept him up late. He was salaried, but she didn't pay him enough to deal with Sierra's mothering on top of her own issues. Inspecting the champagne bottle, Addison found it nearly half full. Rather than celebrate her way into a stupor, she put on a pot of coffee, sat down cross-legged at her desk with her socks and sneakers off, and popped the hood on Edict's code. Months they'd given her. There was no time to waste. She needed to code her way out of the box Nicky had just marched them into. Otherwise, Edict would be little more than a traffic cop, building inspector, and youth sports coaching assistant. What that solution might be, Addison didn't know yet. But none of her people knew the code well enough that she couldn't slip in changes they'd never discover. Edict was hers, and if anyone was going to control Edict's fate, it was Dr. Addison Dakota Akers. Thanks for listening to this Edict AI prequel short story. To witness the havoc Dr. Addison Akers' creation unleashes upon the world, grab the full 25-hour Edict AI. Search Edict AI on your favorite audiobook store or visit edict-ai.com. This has been The Battle and the War, an Edict AI short story. Written by J.S. Morin. Narrated by Michael Naramore. Copyright 2026 by J.S. Morin. Production copyright 2026 by J.S. Morin.